Well, good day, all. Afternoon, evening, wherever you may be in the planet. Interesting day today, along with many here. They all seem to be getting interesting with what's going on in the political world, which, whether you like to believe it or not, does affect all of us. Uh, Karina Gould, the minister of whatever she's the minister of, she made a statement today. And basically, I'll read it to you. She said, Statement by Minister Gould about online misinformation. Fundamentally, democracy rests on the foundation of an informed, engaged citizenry exchanging ideas in the public sphere. Social media has the potential to connect individuals, Canadians across the country and around the world, sharing ideas in the process. However, the use of tools like propaganda, impersonation, and trolling serve little purpose other than to willfully mislead the public. Deceptive, fake, and misleading information circulates rapidly online, and it's a phenomenon that has increasingly taken a hold not only in Canada, but around the world. It is up to each and every Canadian to rally around our democracy and fight back against those who seek to divide us. This did not mean we agree on everything. Democracy, after all, is about a clash of ideas, but it does mean standing up for that which fundamentally makes our country great and protecting it against who wish to do it harm. Sometimes the conversations I've seen online do not serve to elevate the discussion to inform Canadians or to educate our citizens. Instead, it seems to focus on discouraging people from coming forward to discuss their ideas or experiences, from participating in the conversation, or from running for office. Too often, these tactics are directed at women and at minorities and individuals who have historically been denied the opportunity to fully participate in our political institutions. Our country is built on the principles of democracy and freedom of expression. All of us should do our part to elevate the discussion. We all share responsibility to protect our democracy, elevate the debate, and fight back against those who seek to divide. Social media companies must show leadership by enforcing these terms of service, remaining accountable for the content that circulates on their platforms. Well, what does all that mean? Basically, what they did, if you're aware or not aware, there's a lot of parody accounts of like the parody account and Catherine McKenna and a lot of people. I mean, Trump and that. Well, it would seem that Gerald Butts took exception in it, and he actually got a couple of accounts. He made some calls, and he got some accounts banned because they were like looked too real, and they were like people were just, it was just not right. It was, Catherine McKenna said it was identity theft, real dramatic. Now, you really think about this. We have a government and a guy, Gerald Butts, who's almost one of the richest guys in Canada, who's the mouthpiece for the sidekick for Trudeau, or the guy, the puppeteer, I guess you could say. Uh, these guys, people are spending a lot of time worrying about what's happening in Twitter. And I mean, I've seen some of the accounts; they're actually pretty funny. I mean, on YouTube, you see parodies and that. That's comedy. I mean, you take it for what it's worth. I mean, this hour has 22 minutes on CBC. Is that the next to go? Because that does parodies on all political things. So is that against free speech? And this is what we're talking about. So the way she words it, it's very, very nice. Like we Canadians, and it sounds like our democracy is under attack. And the only thing they didn't do was blame the Russians and Harper, but they're already looking at the Russian intervention, of course. Um, so that's already in the works. So you really think about what do we have these people elected for? I mean, you read actual Catherine McKenna's real news stories. I mean, if there's a minister that's out of touch with her portfolio, that's her. Not to mention our prime minister, who's never been in touch with anything other than an old reporter 18 years ago. But that's just my opinion. So what happens? We just let this slide by. Do we let them, start deciding what free speech is? The thing is who's deciding? You might not agree with what somebody's saying. You may say they need to stop that. Stop that. Well, who are they? Who's making this decision? So, okay, you say, well, we need somebody in government to do it. Well, that's all great and fine. So now we got government looking after it. Now parties do change every once in a while. So do the degrees of how we view things. So once this is entrenched, trust me, you're not undoing it. So now you've got people, and believe me, the liberals are probably the worst people to get a hold of this. It's just a bad idea to hold. Anybody, any political party, that's just not the power for them to be able to tell us what to say, what is acceptable to say, what's acceptable to do. You know, but that's where we're going. That's basically in very like extravagant words just saying we want to control the internet because we don't like what you're saying about us. And fine, if she wants to come on and debate and talk about it, about what the real issues are, rather than painting everything with a broad brush. Let's get down to. I mean, they're not going to do it, obviously, but they need to get a grip on reality, which I don't think honestly this liberal government is capable of. They just seem to be tripping into one disaster to the other, and have been. People are finally waking up somewhat. I see they still got a lot of support out there. Heaven forbid, I don't know why. Um, so, that is a very dangerous road that we walk if we lose freedom of speech. And as I said before, we are one of the most heavily regulated countries in the world already. Are we little children that we need the government to regulate everything we also say? Are you and I stupid that we have to have the government look after us? And I mean, you really got to think about this, because I mean, this goes beyond a joke now. We're talking about if like, again, I'll use my wife. In communist USSR, where she lived. I mean, she was born and raised in that, right up till she was 40, or 30, pardon me. So what would happen is people would say things, they get around, and because they weren't, obviously you're not going to walk out in public. They would get together and they'd all talk to neighbors, and if they knew them well enough, they'd talk about politics and who they liked, who they didn't like. Well, the unfortunate part about that is sometimes the neighbors would phone the KGB, the KGB would come over and they'd disappear. Now everybody thinks, oh, that will never happen here. Well, let me ask you this: do you think we would have gotten as far as we've gotten today? That's a question. I mean, look where we're at. Look at what we've lost already. I mean, don't look at what we still have. Look at what we've lost. We're never getting that back. I mean, now your freedom. You can't protect your own home. You can't. We have break-ins here. You can't do nothing. You just sit there, watch them break in. Cops don't have time, or they don't care. And I don't want a police state, so I know what they're doing. They're just saying, "Well, we need more cops, more cops, more cops, more cops." And that's not going to fix anything. There's something inherently wrong here, and nobody wants to talk about it. Well, if we take the conversation even further down the road and say, "Oh, but you can't talk about that. You can't talk about Islam. You can't talk about whites. You can't talk about the Chinese. You can't talk about the Russians. You can't talk about the Ukrainians. You can't talk about anybody. And heaven forbid, you should talk badly about your government, because they are there for you. How dare you? What kind of Canadian citizen are you? You are not a patriot. You are dirt. And this is where we're going. And you start reading the narratives that's out there. That's exactly what's happening. And that's all left wing. And guess who has enabled them 3 years ago? That would be our Junior Trudeau, the enabler, the virtue signaler. The guy that hasn't said anything about the apology he gave for the groping incident 18 years ago. Well, now there's a lot more stories out. People are asking. So the heat's turned up. We'll see what he does. I mean, we'll see if he actually lives up to what he said, because he said he's the one that said it. Nobody forced him. I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist. We nobody's safe if you've touched a woman the wrong way and inappropriately. Nobody's safe. Doesn't matter how far back we got to go. You were 18 and you touched a woman. You should have known. You know that. And that's what he's. This is what he said. Nobody else said it. He said it. So we'll see if that's just more bullshit coming out of his mouth, which seems to be a lot of, or if he's actually going to come out and say something. And I'd be surprised if he did, because him and Gerald Butts, I mean, you know, you take a look at what's happening in the United States and Canada, and it's sad. I mean, we're coming really close to. I've said for a while, we've got a fight coming, man. It's coming. And if we start letting them control free speech, well, that just draws it all closer. And I guarantee you're not going to like it. And as I've said before, if you push things into the shadows, you're not going to like what comes out of those shadows at all. And that's a fact. So, food for thought before the weekend. Everybody have a great weekend. Subscribe, leave a comment down below. I will answer. Hope you have a good one, and we'll probably talk to you on either Sunday or probably Monday. Have a great weekend, all.